The transport ship slid out of hyperspace with a low hum, its metal frame shivering as the stars of the Zyelian home system came into view. Captain Elias Ward stood by the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive alien world grow larger with every passing second. It was beautiful. The planet's surface shimmered in shades of emerald and silver, with huge oceans reflecting light like glass. Around it, 3 moons hung in perfect orbit, each glowing faintly blue. "Approaching Zyelian Prime," the pilot said over the comms. "We'll be in docking range in 3 minutes, Captain." Elias nodded without turning away from the view. This was more than just a diplomatic mission. It was a first in human history. For decades, the Zyelian Empire had been a mystery to humanity, a distant and feared superpower in the galaxy. No human had ever set foot on their capital world. Until now, he was the first. The reason? No one had told him exactly. Officially, he was Earth's ambassador of peace, here to discuss trade routes and cooperation treaties. But every diplomat he had spoken to before departure had avoided eye contact when talking about the Zyelians. There was something they weren't saying. The docking sequence began. Through the window, Elias saw the alien station, a vast, ring-shaped structure. Orbiting the planet, its spires twisting like silver vines into the darkness. Hundreds of ships, some small and sleek, others massive and bristling with weapons, drifted in controlled patterns around it. When the transport finally docked, a hiss of air filled the corridor as the pressure equalized. The door slid open, and the first thing Elias noticed was the silence. No chatter, no mechanical noise, just the soft echo of his own boots as he stepped onto the alien station. 2 Zyelian guards waited for him. They were tall, easily over 7 feet, with elongated limbs and smooth, pale skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Their eyes were large, black, and reflective, making it impossible to read their expressions. Each wore a suit of segmented armor that seemed to shift color slightly as they moved. One of them stepped forward. "Captain Elias Ward of Earth?" The voice was deep but surprisingly smooth, carrying a strange musical tone. "Yes," Elias said, keeping his tone calm. "You will come with us. The Queen is expecting you." The Queen. He had been told he would meet her eventually, but not immediately upon arrival. Still, he gave a short nod. "Lead the way." The walk through the station was surreal. The architecture was unlike anything Elias had seen. Walls of translucent crystal that pulsed faintly, ceilings that arched like the inside of a seashell, and floors that felt slightly soft underfoot, as if made from woven fibers. They passed alien workers, merchants, and soldiers, all of whom stopped to watch him. Their eyes followed him in complete silence. No smiles, no greetings, just watching. Finally, they reached a large docking bay where a long, sleek craft waited. The ship's hull reflected the light like liquid metal, and strange symbols glowed along its sides. The guards gestured for him to enter. Inside, the air smelled faintly of something floral, and the seats were covered in a soft material that almost felt alive. The flight to the planet's surface took less than 10 minutes, but the view was breathtaking. From above, Zyelian Prime was a living jewel. Rivers like silver threads cut through vast forests of crystalline trees, and massive cities rose from the ground in spirals, glittering under the sun. The Queen's palace was unlike anything on Earth. It was a colossal structure of white and gold stone rising from the center of a circular city, spires twisted high into the sky, each tipped with a shimmering light. Bridges of glass-like material connected the towers, and waterfalls spilled from the upper levels into a wide moat below. As the craft descended into the main landing court, Elias noticed thousands of Zyelians gathered on the surrounding balconies, watching silently. Again, that same eerie quiet. The guards led him through enormous golden gates into a vast hall. The floor was polished to a mirror finish, reflecting the light from massive crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen rain. Along the walls, alien nobles stood in intricate robes, their eyes fixed on him. At the far end of the hall, upon a raised platform, sat the throne, and upon the throne, the queen. She was unlike the others. Taller, more regal, her skin glimmered, faintly with a silver hue. Her eyes, deep and black, seemed to absorb the light around her. She wore a crown of delicate crystal spikes, and her long robe shimmered with moving patterns that shifted like water. As Elias stepped forward, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. His boots echoed with each step until he reached the base of the platform. Then something happened that froze him in place. The queen rose from her throne, descended the steps slowly, and stopped just a meter away from him. Her gaze locked on his, and for a moment he felt like she could see right through him. Past the uniform, past the skin, straight into his very soul, and then she knelt. The alien queen, ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, dropped to one knee before him, her head bowed. The nobles gasped in unison. Some murmured words he couldn't understand. Others simply stared, their expressions unreadable. Elias blinked, his heart thundering in his chest. This wasn't in the mission briefing. This wasn't in any briefing. Slowly she spoke, not in her language, but in perfect English. "We have waited far too long." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His mind was spinning. Why was she kneeling? Why did her voice sound like she had known him all his life? The queen rose to her full height again, and her voice carried across the hall. "The prophecy has been fulfilled. The stellar heir has come." Every noble in the room lowered their head. Elias stood frozen, completely lost. Prophecy. Stellar. Heir? He wasn't a prince, a chosen one, or whatever she thought he was. He was just a soldier sent here to make polite conversation about trade agreements. But as the queen stepped back toward her throne, her eyes never left his, and in them, Elias saw something that unsettled him more than anything else in this alien palace. Recognition. As if she had met him before, as if she knew him. The queen's words echoed in Elias's head long after the throne hall emptied. The prophecy has been fulfilled. The stellar heir has come. He kept replaying the moment over and over, the way she had looked at him, the way she had spoken his, language so perfectly, the strange feeling that she truly believed what she said, and yet, none of this made sense. Elias wasn't a chosen one. He was just a human soldier who happened to be good at his job. His orders were simple. Represent Earth, make a good impression, and open talks about trade and peace. No one had mentioned any prophecy. The Zyelian guards escorted him to a private chamber within the palace. The room was vast, with walls made of smooth white stone that seemed to glow faintly on its own. A wide balcony overlooked the shining city below, and a table of crystal held a bowl of strange blue fruit that gave off a soft scent, like honey and mint. The guards did not speak. They simply took positions by the door. Elias removed his gloves and placed them on the table, his mind spinning. He paced slowly across the polished floor, trying to make sense of everything. Finally, he decided to ask. "The queen, why did she kneel? What did she mean by prophecy?" The guard on the left shifted slightly, but neither answered. Their black, glass-like eyes reflected him like a mirror. "You can't tell me?" he asked. No reply. It was clear they were not going to talk. Hours passed before the door opened again. A tall Zyelian female entered, wearing a long robe patterned with silver lines. She carried a small device in one hand and moved with the grace of someone who knew her place in the royal court. I am Lyra, she said in clear, if accented, English. I am here to help you. Understand. Understand what? Elias asked. She glanced at the guards, then motioned for him to follow her out onto the balcony. The air outside was cool and filled with the faint hum of the city below. Queen believes you are the fulfillment of an ancient Zyelian prophecy, Lyra said. A story told for thousands of cycles. I'm not part of any prophecy, Elias said flatly. That, Lyra said with a small smile, is exactly what the prophecy says the stellar heir would claim. Elias frowned. All right, tell me about it. Lyra's voice became quieter, as if she didn't want the guards to overhear. A long time ago, before our empire rose, before our fleets traveled the stars, our world was at war. Clans fought one another for land, for power, for survival. In that time, an old seer spoke of a being who would come from beyond the skies. This being would not be of Zyelian blood, yet would carry the mark of the royal line. They would unite the clans and bring an age of peace, or an age of destruction. Elias leaned against the balcony rail. And you think that's me? The queen does, Lyra corrected, and so will many others, once the story spreads. But why me? Lyra studied him for a moment. Do you have a scar? Elias raised an eyebrow. A scar? Yes. A mark above your right eye. Without thinking, Elias brushed his fingers over the small scar just above his eyebrow, the one he got years ago in a training accident. Lyra's expression changed. The prophecy says the stellar heir would be marked above the right eye. It is one of the signs. Elias shook his head. That's just coincidence. Perhaps, Lyra said, but there are other details. The prophecy says the heir will come in a time of great unrest, that they will be both warrior and messenger, that their arrival will be met with silence as the people watch in awe. Tell me, Captain, did you notice how quiet the city was when you arrived? Elias remembered. The streets, the balconies, the palace hall, all those eyes watching him without a sound. Coincidence, he repeated, though his voice lacked the same certainty. Later that evening, Elias was taken to a grand dining hall. The queen was there, seated at the head of a long, curved table, with high-ranking nobles seated along its length. The food was unlike anything he had seen. Glistening fruits, roasted creatures with shimmering skin, and tall goblets filled with a glowing golden drink. When Elias entered, every noble stopped talking. All eyes turned to him. The queen gestured to the seat beside her. Sit, Captain Ward. He did, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. You are comfortable? She asked. As comfortable as a man can be when he doesn't understand. What's going on? Elias replied. The queen smiled faintly, as if she appreciated his honesty. You will understand soon enough. For now, know that you are welcome in this palace. Why me? He asked bluntly. Why does your court think I'm part of some prophecy? Her dark eyes locked on his. Because you are. You are the one we have waited for. The bloodline has returned. Bloodline? Elias repeated. I'm not Zyelian. No, she said, but your ancestor was bound to one of ours. A promise made, passed through generations, hidden from human history. Elias stared at her, unsure if she was speaking in riddles or simply mad. And you think that's me? That I'm this stellar heir? I do not think, she said softly. I know. After the meal, Elias was escorted back to his chambers. The palace felt different now, less like a marvel of alien beauty, and more like a maze where unseen eyes followed his every move. That night, sleep didn't come easily. The city outside glowed faintly under the light of its moons, and distant ships moved across the sky. He couldn't stop thinking about the Queen's words and the scar. Coincidence, he told himself again. But deep down, a small, unwelcome thought was beginning to take root. What if it wasn't? The next morning, things took a darker turn. Lyra woke him early, her normally calm voice urgent. "Captain, you must be careful. The prophecy may inspire loyalty, but it will also inspire fear." "Fear? Yes. There are those who will see you as a threat. If the Queen believes you are the stellar heir, it means change is coming. Not everyone in the Empire wants change." Elias grabbed his uniform jacket. "Are you saying someone might try to kill me?" "I am saying," Lyra replied, "that they already might be planning it." Before he could answer, one of the guards outside his chamber shouted something in Zyelian. The sound of footsteps and distant cries echoed through the corridor. Lyra's face tightened. "It begins." Elias didn't need translation to understand her tone. Something was coming, and it wasn't going to be friendly. The alarm in the palace wasn't loud. It was worse. It was a deep, steady tone that seemed to echo inside Elias's bones, each beat like a slow drum. The sound didn't make people panic. It made them tense. Zyelian guards moved quickly down, the corridors, their armor shifting colors like ripples of water. Elias followed Lyra through the hall, his boots hitting the smooth floor in quick steps. "What's going on?" he asked. "An intruder," she said without looking back. "The palace security says they are here for you." Elias's pulse quickened. "For me?" She gave a small, sharp nod. "I warned you. There are those who want you gone before the Queen can make her declaration." They turned a corner, only to be met by two armored guards sprinting the opposite way. One barked something in the Zyelian language, and Lyra replied quickly. The guard's black eyes flicked to Elias for a split second, long enough for him to see there was no friendliness in them. Then they ran past. Elias didn't like that look. They reached his chamber, but before they could enter, the door slid, open on its own. Inside, the room was dark except for the pale light from the balcony. Something moved in the shadows. "Stay back," Lyra whispered, holding out an arm. Elias scanned the room, his soldier instincts kicking in. He spotted a figure, crouched near the balcony, tall, wearing black armor that reflected no light. The intruder turned their head slightly, revealing the faint glint of a curved blade. In one smooth motion, they leapt forward. Lyra shoved Elias aside, the blade cutting the air where his chest had been a second earlier. The guards outside shouted, rushing in with weapons drawn. The intruder moved like liquid shadow, slipping past strikes, their blade ringing against alien metal spears. Elias didn't just stand there. He dove for the table, grabbed one of the crystal chairs, and swung it with full force. The chair shattered against the intruder's side, making them stumble. That stumble was enough. One guard drove a spear into the attacker's leg, another slammed the butt of their weapon into the side of their head. The intruder collapsed, their blade clattering across the floor. The guards moved quickly, binding the attacker's hands behind their back with a glowing restraint. Elias's breathing was heavy, his heart pounding. That was close. Lyra didn't answer right away. She knelt beside the fallen attacker, pulling away the mask. Underneath was a Zyelian face, pale skin, dark eyes, but instead of fear, the prisoner's expression was full of cold defiance. They said something in their language, and Lyra's lips tightened. "What did they say?" Elias asked. "They said," Lyra replied slowly, "that you are a lie, and lies must be cut away." The Queen's court was called into emergency session. Elias was escorted through the long, glowing hallways toward the throne room. But this time there was no grand welcome, no silent crowd. The nobles inside were already whispering among themselves. When Elias entered, their whispers stopped. The Queen sat on her throne, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. Beside her stood three high-ranking nobles, 2 males and 1 female, each wearing tall, pointed crowns of metal. "Captain Ward," the Queen said, her voice carrying a cross. "The room. It seems your arrival has stirred conflict." "Your Majesty," Elias said carefully, "if someone is trying to kill me, then it's not exactly my idea of a good welcome." A ripple of murmurs passed through the nobles at his bluntness. One of the crowned males stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is exactly what we warned you about. This human's presence will divide the empire, not unite it." Elias turned his head toward the speaker. "You mean because of your prophecy?" The noble's eyes narrowed. "Because the prophecy is dangerous. If some believe it, they will follow him. If others do not, they will fight him. Either way, blood will spill." "Enough," the Queen said firmly. The hall went silent again. She looked at Elias. "You should know, Captain, that your life here will not be simple. You have friends you have not met, and enemies you cannot yet see." "I'm starting to get that," Elias replied. For the next 2 days, Elias was kept, mostly within his quarters for safety, though it felt more like a gilded prison. Lyra visited him often, bringing updates. The attacker had been part of a faction called the Shattered Claw, a group of warlords who opposed the Queen's rule and any peace with outsiders. "They believe the prophecy will end their power," Lyra explained. "If the stellar heir unites the clans, they lose control. And their first move is to stab me before I even get to make a speech," Elias said. Lyra gave a faint smile. "In their way, they are efficient." On the 3rd day, the Queen summoned him again. This time, instead of the throne hall, she met him in a smaller chamber, a round room with walls of moving light, patterns shifting like waves. "You are restless," she said. "I don't like sitting still while people out there are plotting," Elias replied. The Queen studied him for a long moment. "You are a soldier. You act, you do not wait." "That's about right." She stepped closer. "Then perhaps it is time for you to see the truth for yourself. There are records, old ones, kept deep within the palace. They speak of the first contact between my ancestors and yours. They may help you understand why I believe what I believe." Elias's curiosity sparked. "Then let's see them." The Queen led him through passages guarded by soldiers in heavy ceremonial armor, down spiraling stairways into the depths of the palace. The air grew cooler, the walls older, no longer the smooth glowing stone, but ancient blocks carved with symbols. Finally, they entered a vast chamber lit by hovering orbs. In the center stood a massive device, half machine, half statue, with a wide crystal surface. The Queen touched a panel, and the crystal flared to life, projecting images into the air. Elias stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. The projection showed a ship, not Zyelian, not like anything in the room. Its lines were sharper, its hull marked with faded letters, English letters. "This is human," Elias said quietly. The Queen nodded. "Your people came here long ago. Before, your history remembers." The image changed, showing figures, humans, in old-fashioned spacesuits, standing beside Zyelians in simple robes. One human, tall and broad-shouldered, stood beside a younger alien female wearing a crown. The Queen's voice softened. "That was my ancestor, and the man beside her was yours." Elias felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. "That's impossible, is it?" the Queen asked. "Perhaps your world forgot. Ours did not." They stayed in the chamber for hours as she showed him record after record, battle scenes where humans and Zyelians fought side by side, celebrations, and a moment where the human captain placed a hand over his heart as the young Queen mirrored the gesture. "A promise," she said, "an oath between worlds, passed through blood, waiting for the time when the bond would be renewed." Elias wanted to argue, to say it was all too much, but a small part of him, deep inside, was starting to believe she wasn't making it up. But belief came with danger. Because if this was true, then the people trying to kill him weren't just afraid of a prophecy. They were afraid of history coming back to life. When they finally left the archives, the Queen's final words to him were quiet, almost a whisper. "They will come again, Captain, and next time, they will not fail." Elias looked her in the eye. "Then they'd better bring more than one blade." The Queen gave the faintest smile. The war in the shadows had begun. The palace felt colder than before. Elias walked through the dimly lit halls, the echo of his boots bouncing softly off the ancient stones. The Queen had shown him the old records, the evidence of a secret alliance between humans and Zyelians long ago. But understanding that truth didn't make it easier. It made everything more complicated. He thought about the prophecy, the Queen's strange respect for him, the attack on his life. Everything pointed to one thing: his presence on this planet was not by chance. The words of the Queen stayed with him. The bloodline has returned. What did that mean for him? For Earth? For this alien empire? That morning, Elias was summoned to the palace archives again, this time without the Queen. Lyra led him through winding passages filled with glowing runes and ancient artifacts. The air was thick with history. They arrived at a hidden chamber, smaller and older than the one they had visited before. This place felt sacred. Lyra turned to Elias. "What you are about to see has never been shown to outsiders before." She opened a heavy door, revealing a room lined with glass cases. Inside each case rested items, some glowing softly, others covered in dust. Elias's eyes caught a gleaming sword. The blade was unlike any he had seen. It shimmered with an energy that seemed alive. "That sword," Lyra said, "belongs to the first human who came here. It was a gift from the Queen's ancestor." Elias reached out, but stopped himself. "How is this possible?" he whispered. Lyra looked at him carefully. "Because your blood is part of that history. The promise made so long ago was kept in secret." They moved to a table where a star map was projected in midair. Bright dots showed ancient star systems connected by glowing lines. "This," Lyra said, "is the path the first human ship took to reach Zyelian Prime. It was a one-way journey. The ship crashed, but its crew helped save the Queen's ancestor from death." Elias stared at the map. "If this is true, why has no one on Earth known about it?" "Because the records were lost," Lyra said softly. "Your historians have gaps, and the Zyelians hid the truth, fearing what it might cause." Elias shook his head. "If it's true, then I am the heir. But I'm still just a soldier, not royalty." "Blood doesn't care about titles," Lyra replied. "It flows. It connects." Days passed, and Elias began to feel the weight of his new role. The palace was no longer just a building. It was a place of secrets and power. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. Some nobles looked at him with awe, others with suspicion. He trained with the Queen's elite guards, learning their ways. Their fighting style was strange but effective, blending grace and strength. One afternoon during training, Lyra approached him with urgent news. "The Shattered Claw has gathered more forces. They plan to attack the city soon." Elias frowned. "How soon?" "Before the next moon rises." That night, Elias stood on his balcony, looking over the glowing city. The air was calm, but his mind raced. He thought about the prophecy, the bloodline, and the war that was coming. A soft voice startled him. "You're thinking too much." Elias turned to see the Queen standing behind him. "Why do you believe in the prophecy so strongly?" he asked. "Because I have lived it," she said. "Because I carry the burden of the past." "Then why kneel to me when I arrived?" Elias asked quietly. Her eyes were distant. "Because you are the promise made centuries ago, because you are the hope of peace." Elias looked away, struggling with the truth. The next day, Elias and the Queen met with the Empire's council to prepare for the attack. The nobles argued fiercely. Some wanted to fight openly, others preferred to negotiate. Elias spoke calmly. "We must unite, not divide. The enemy wants us weak." A noble woman with silver hair glared at him. "You speak as if you own this empire." "I only want peace," Elias said firmly. The council finally agreed to a plan blending defense and diplomacy. When the attack came, it was sudden and brutal, shattered. Claw forces stormed the city gates, their war cries echoing through the streets. Elias fought alongside the Queen's guards, their weapons flashing under the twin moons. He moved with skill and determination, defending the palace walls. At one point, he caught sight of the intruder leader, a tall figure cloaked in black. Their eyes met briefly. Elias knew the battle was only beginning. After the fight, the city was scarred but still standing. The Queen declared Elias the stellar heir in front of the people. She spoke of the ancient promise of unity and of a new age for their worlds. Elias felt the weight of the moment. He was no longer just a soldier, he was a symbol, and with that symbol came responsibility. The hidden truth had been revealed, but the future was uncertain. Elias knew he had to be ready for the challenges, for the enemies, and for the hope he carried. Because now, the fate of two worlds rested in his hands. The dawn light spilled across the palace towers, turning the shining city into a sea of gold and silver. Captain Elias Ward stood on the balcony, looking out over Zyelian Prime. The air was heavy with tension. The war was not over. It had only just begun. He tightened the strap of his uniform and turned as the Queen approached. Her face was calm but serious. "The enemy will return," she said softly. Elias nodded. "We have prepared as best we can." She looked into his eyes. "This time, it will not be a simple battle. They will bring their full strength." Elias swallowed. "Then we will meet them with everything we have." Inside the palace hall, nobles gathered in tense discussion. "This alliance is fragile," one noble warned. "The clans will fight among themselves once the war begins." "We must show unity," the Queen said firmly. "Captain Ward is our symbol of hope." Elias listened quietly. He felt the eyes of the Empire upon him. He was more than a soldier now. He was the stellar heir, the living promise of peace between humans and Zyelians. And with that title came great responsibility. The enemy fleet appeared on the horizon, dark ships blotting out the stars. Elias stood with the Queen on the palace steps as the armies gathered around them. "Today," Elias began, his voice steady and strong, "we fight, not as enemies but as one people. We fight for our future, for peace, and for the promise made long ago." The crowd cheered, their voices rising in a wave of hope. The Queen raised her hand, signaling the charge. The battle was fierce and brutal. Elias fought in the front lines, moving with skill and courage. His training, his knowledge of human tactics, and his understanding of Zyelian combat blended together to give their forces an edge. Explosions lit the sky, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Despite the chaos, Elias's mind stayed clear. He saw the enemy commander, a massive figure clad in dark armor, leading the charge. With a shout, Elias charged toward the commander, their weapons clashing with a shower of sparks. The duel was intense. The commander fought with strength and skill, but Elias was faster and smarter. With a final strike, Elias disarmed the commander and forced him to his knees. "Yield!" Elias demanded. The commander looked up, breathing hard. "You have won, for now." Elias nodded. "We fight for peace. Lay down your arms. The enemy forces, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat. The battle was won, but Elias knew the war was far from over. Back at the palace, the queen approached him. "You have done well," she said, her voice full of respect. "The empire owes you a great debt." Elias shook his head. "I only did what was necessary," she smiled. "No, Captain, you did more. You brought hope." That evening, the queen held a ceremony in the great hall. The nobles gathered to witness the renewal of the ancient oath between humans and Zyelians. The queen spoke of the promise made centuries ago and how it had been kept alive through Elias. She and Elias stood before the crowd, hands joined. "Today," she declared, "we unite not just two people, but two worlds." Elias looked out at the faces before him, humans and Zyelians alike. He felt the weight of history and hope resting on his shoulders. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly to the queen. She nodded. "And we will face it together." The stars shone brightly overhead as the two worlds took their first step toward a new future. Elias knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time, he believed peace was possible, because he was not alone. He was the stellar heir, bridging the gap between two great civilizations, and together they would build a better tomorrow.